Hello and welcome to Team Space Bun's demo of The Greatest. This is a brownfield code base that was a website for monthly subscriptions of trendy clothes and accessories. So, coming at you today, we've got Eric, Judith, Katie, Naomi, Leah, and myself here, Priya. So, moving on to our agenda, we're going to begin with a project overview, displaying that project board in our management style. We're going to move into a demo. After that, we're going to talk about our Git workflow and end with the analysis of our existing code base before we let the floor go for our Q&A session. So let's jump on in.
Cool. So I would like to start by showcasing the project board. So over here, we start off with full stack user stories, which are broken down into smaller features, which are placed in the backlog. Once we go into a specific ticket and we work on it, we do a pull request. It's linked to that user story and into our milestones that we created in the very, very beginning. It's placed in the in progress. And then once the pull request is merged, it is sent to our done and deployed. Some of our tickets, as seen in our seeding ticket on your next tablia, those became notes which that we could basically go back to. As you can see, they are notes that we could use for GraphQL testing. And yeah, this was mainly an example of our team collaboration, as was our column back in our project board, which was our language column. There you could see that we were trying to translate front ender terms to back ender. We were trying to translate back and forth just so that we could all be on the same page and understand our language. And yeah, that's basically it. Eric, you want to take it away?
Okay. So to kind of just echo what Judith was saying, what we tried to do was, I remember in the beginning, we talked about how granular the ticket should be. And we kind of modified that to really break it down even a little bit more. In our done column, we have I believe a create, profile form. And there is where we had the initial ticket. But then in our backlog, we ended up breaking it down even further into allowing the user to edit the image input. That was its own ticket. And then we made that kind of just like a checklist. Now, with that, we did run into a few bugs, but we were able to use this as a good launching point to kind of see where should we get started, what features should we focus on next, and how can we incorporate what we're doing with the other side. So if it was front end, like how is our submit button going to interact with the back end? We could take a look at this project board and be like, okay, so here's what back end has already done on top of actually collaborating with them. And we can see like, okay, we're not quite ready for this part yet, or cool, we're ready to actually do an Axios post to the back end, and that should be fine. And yeah, so that's kind of how we use the project board to our benefit here. And I should also add, by the way, this is the most organized project board I've ever been a part of. So I want to thank Backend for that.
Okay, so now we're going to move into actually demoing the application for y'all. I want to just kind of give you guys some context for what we're looking at here. When we inherited this brownfield project, there was no ability for a user to make any changes to their own profile. So the user story we're dealing with here is overcoming the frustration of not being able to go in and add a profile image, add a description, change important information like their shipping or email address, and then submit that information so it was available for later use. Katie, are you aware that you're muted? Or at least I can't hear you?
Thank you. Sorry about that. I am going to go ahead and demo our application. If we start here on our landing page, this is the project that was given to us. You're able to go in and log in with an email and a password. Once you log in, you're able to see your crates, which are basically like subscription boxes for clothing. Our track asked us to be able to input profile information. So if we go to profile, the only thing we're currently going to see is the user, which would be the user's name, and user@crate.com, which is their email. We went ahead and we created an additional button for edit profile. When we click the edit profile, it'll route to the new form for to edit your profile. You can go in and add your name, your email address, an image, and a description, which is basically like what you view yourself as. So let's just say like savvy shopper, and then click submit. And we now have an image that also displays your name, your description, and your email. If you would like to log out, you can certainly click the log out button and it'll route you back here. You can log back in. Head back to profile and the image and your information will persist. And just a couple things to consider. We also, the image is actually its own component, as well as the edit profile form was also built as its own component. And I will send it back to Naomi.
I don't really have a lot to wrap up from that. Just to mention that as was discussed, we didn't have these components available when we inherited this project, and we also needed to make sure that we were linking up to the Redux store and using Axios requests to post and fetch, which was definitely an interesting process.
All right, I'm going to jump back into our slides and talk a bit about how we work together and how we approach the existing code. So we had a lot of fun getting time together, both pairing and debugging. So we kind of took the approach of prioritizing deep learning and getting the chance to dive into the other side of the stack over just kind of knocking out features. So spent a lot of time together doing that. Personally, for me, watching the debugging process on both sides was really helpful. We had a lot of times where we came together. We weren't sure, were issues caused by things on the back end or something not being called correctly from the front end. So it was a really helpful process to be able to work through together. And also we like wearing space buttons. As far as our Git workflow, we kind of outlined that at the beginning, but evolved it as we went. So for our PR descriptions, we kept it pretty basic, but outlined what was changed and why, and any outstanding notes or questions we had. For reviews, we tagged someone from each side of the stack. And then the final merger was whoever was on that side of the stack. So if it's a backend ticket, a backend person would be the final person merging. There was lots of pairing. So we did some live PR reviews and discussion versus just conversing in the ticket, or I'm sorry, in the PR. Never merging your own PR was a rule, as well as doing clear commits. So trying to keep our commit history concise. We had some time to practice rebasing and squashing. So if you look at our history, it's a history of commits versus just merges. And if we have time in the end, I can jump into any of these examples if you're interested.
Awesome. So we've talked about this brownfield code base quite a few times, and just very briefly, a brownfield code base is it's an existing code base that already exists out, but it's an existing code base that we are jumping into. So it's new to us, but it's not new to the world. And so how did we jump into this? So we had a few different techniques, and we used line-by-line code analysis, where we did this separately, researching on our own, and then came together to share that understanding. To drive that understanding further, we also visually mapped out our file tree. And do you mind switching to the next slide just real quick for me? And so you can see our backend file tree and our front end file tree. And we really just wanted to take that GUI tree history and say, what does it look like? Where are we connected? How many levels deep are we? How do we really understand this code? Do you mind jumping back for me? And what we ended up seeing is that we took that line by line code analysis and the visual map and we said, hey, what if we follow a specific query? And then when front end and back end came together, what if we ask the question, how is the API folder and the web folder, how are those talking to each other? So we really wanted to follow through visually and understand our line by line code analysis. And what this ended up meaning is that we were able to update our code annotations. There were a lot of times where we thought we understood a file, we really didn't, and we had to update that understanding. We thought that this is where the front end was making a post request or a fetch request to the backend database, but it really wasn't happening that way. And we had to continuously hit the analysis portion over and over again throughout these past 2 weeks to really fully get an understanding of what was going on. And the final thing we did that really drove that understanding of this code home was the testing sequence. So once we had gotten past testing environment, we were able to write tests for our legacy code. On the back end, we wrote legacy code for our queries and mutations. On the front end, they were writing code for user-facing features. And what this helped us do was further adapt our understanding and further update our visualization. So we hit the code analysis again, and we hit that map tree again. And we saw this analysis as a flexible technique that we were constantly revisiting. And on that note, we'd love to transition to y'all's Q&A section.